To welcome everyone once again to the Words and Sentences webinar from Snowflake this evening. I would like to welcome Danielle to the stage, and she will be doing our webinar this evening on words and sentences. So in just a moment, Danielle will take over.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. We know how valuable your time is. So today we're going to be doing our webinar on the words and sentences lesson templates. And I really like these because it requires a lot of thinking outside the box. So yes, the main objective is building words or building sentences, but the design of it and how students can implement it, it adds for a lot of really great creative moments. So I'm going to start by taking you to my screen. So I did go through the lesson community to download a few of the templates that I can show you a little bit more in a moment. One of them is Kelly's. She makes such beautiful lessons. But I'm going to walk you first through creating that lesson. So with this lesson template, we have words, we have sentences. The great thing with this is both of these lesson templates are interchangeable. So I can create a lesson in words, and then using that same data, I can move it over to sentences, and it has a little bit of a different functionality. So I'm going to start with words. All of our lesson templates have this similar layout where you have your left side for inputting data, you have your right side with your preview screen and with your customizations. So in this case, I'm going to do a words lesson with Valentine's Day themes, since we are getting close to that holiday. With words, I would input my data. So I will do some Valentine's words like heart, love, candy, flowers. Hopefully all those good things that you're getting from your sweetheart. Cupid, the month of February. So you can see as I'm putting in my data and doing this on my computer, I'm simply hitting the enter button or the return key, but I can also go ahead and hit create content, and that will give me a new box to pop in. So let's do word kiss. So you can see in the lesson preview, I have all of my words. They are all currently linked together, but each letter is independent. In my customization, I can add colors to the words. So you can see that preview changes. Or I can also keep them all random and let the screen do the easy work for me. With this particular lesson design, the objective is students would take the letters and they can move them around. They can use the lines to help keep them in order. And they would take the letters and spell different words. So maybe I would have the word boy. So I can move my letters around. It's almost a lot like the refrigerator magnet poetry. So that's kind of a fun way to do it. With that, there's also different rules for it. So right now I have all of my letters are currently ordered. I'll update the preview. You can see that everything is in order. The letters all go with exactly how I wrote them out when I put that data in. I also have the option to randomize. Randomize is going to keep my words in the same line, but it's going to mix up the letters. So if I were helping students practice spelling words, this might be a tool that I would use for it. So then they would have to take the letters and move them around to try to correctly decipher the words. The other option to make it more challenging is you can select all random. When you select all random, everything is everywhere. So for this, you could then have students taking the letters and trying to form their own words just with the assortment of letters that you've provided with them. With all of our lessons on the Snowflake app as well as snow.live, which is what I'm working on right now, we have options to customize text. So I could change my text. I could change the color. I can add a shadow. You can see the shadow makes it a little bit more bold. I can change my theme. We have 26 different background themes, and several of those are live animations. So the live animations, like Candy, would be an example of one, which it might not preview for me right now. When I go to play this lesson, you can see that as the lesson begins, there's a little preview. It's going a little slower than I'd like it to, but that's probably because we are running our webinar at the same time. So it's taking up a little bit of my bandwidth. This would be a much more smooth transition as you were playing it in class or if students were on their own devices. So each of these little animations move through, and it's just a great way to transition into that activity. Keeps the kids engaged. So then you can see with my background, I can move my letters around, creating new words. And that's one of the snowflake backgrounds. I also have the option to add in my own background. So I can browse from images saved on my computer. I can also connect with my Google Drive, my OneDrive. We do have backgrounds in our content gallery. So I can take, let me see, glitter sounds like it'd be fun and Valentine's themed. So there's that background. Or I could go through and I could do an image search so that it would be more specific to the content that I'm doing with my students. I taught middle school social studies, and with all of the lessons that I did, I always tried to have my background relate to the subject that we were learning about. So with my 6th grade students, we did ancient world. My background would be something related to whatever ancient civilization we were studying, be it Egypt or ancient Greece. I would customize the background. Makes the lessons really personal. You also have the option with your backgrounds where you can create your own backgrounds. So if you're familiar at all with designing on everything from Snagit to Photoshop, or even just simple Google Drawing, you can save those backgrounds as JPEGs or PNGs and then upload them using the browse option. So then you can have your specific backgrounds. You also can add in the timer. So if I were doing a station rotation, I might want my students to spend 3 minutes trying to create as many Valentine's Day themed words as they can using the letters that I've provided. And then as my students play, I'm just going to change that background to a not moving one. As my students played the lesson, you'll see the timer would appear at the top of your screen. And the timer is not going to start until the students start moving. So as soon as they touch the screen, as soon as they're interacting, then you'll see the timer is going. From the words lesson template, so I think this is really great for helping students with spelling, helping them learn vocabulary words. It also provides them with a lot of creative moments where they can design their own words and try and come up using the letters that you've provided. But from this, all of the data that I have input, I can change this lesson activity type. So if I go to my 3 lines and change lesson activity type, my data will also appear in the sentence. So you can see my words are still there, same stuff that I wrote before, but sentences are a little bit different. Everything is connected as one, as opposed to being in separate lines. Sentences also gives you the opportunity to create groups. So this would be rounds. So let's say I wanted my students to match the Italian word to the English. And I'm going to just move some of these around. And of course, I did give myself a cheat sheet because I don't speak Italian. So with my rounds, as I'm trying to move data, I just simply drag it and drop it into the new area. And I'll just get rid of those for now. So I would have one word, I'd add a space, and then I would add, in this case, it's matching Italian and English, I would add my Italian word. Thank goodness for Google Translate. And you can see that in this, my preview, they're showing the words side by side. So my instructions are at the top. I'm telling my students what I want them to do. But I obviously don't want them to have the words already next to each other. I would then change my rules to be randomized. So again, that just flips the order. So I would want to move it to all random. And now my students would be able to try and match the words together and put them in the same line. Another really great way to use this activity, especially in an ELA setting, is helping students write sentences and understand the best way to put sentences in order. So I'm going to have a new round. I'm going to have my directions. Place the correct order. And then I'll write a sentence. The girls played soccer after school. Danielle baked a birthday cake. And my dad rides the train to work. So there I have 3 sentences. Right now, they are all random, so it's a big mess. It'd be really difficult for my students to figure it out. But if I put them at randomized, everything stays in its own individual line. And with sentences, I have the ability to lock my rows. Once I select lock my rows, this is not an option we have in words. This is only in sentences. When I lock my row, that means my students can only move the words within that row. They can't move them up and down. They can only move them in that space. So this would be a feature I was using if I wanted my students to do an activity like this, or if it were placing in order the lines of a poetry stanza, or placing in order the lines for a step-by-step process of how to perform a scientific experiment. I would keep them with my rows locked. Just like in words, I can also change color. But you'll notice as I'm changing color, it's going to put all of the words that are the same with the same color. There we go, and update again. And then we can see our second round as well.
Danielle?
Yes.
We have a question from Angela asking,
Great.
does the color of the word change when it's randomized? I'm wondering if I would be able to have nouns be one color and verbs be a different color, etc.
Well, let's go ahead and add that in. So we'll just do nouns, verbs. So if I did cat, dog, chicken, oops, cake. I'm thinking a lot of cake because it is my birthday today, so I'm like ready for a piece of cake. And then if I had verbs, run, jump, bark. There we go. So when I go to my customize option, I can select if I wanted all of my nouns, let's say I want them all blue, and then I want all of my verbs a separate color. So you would have to manually do that. You'd have to select which color you would want. You can include that in your directions too. All of the nouns are this color, all of the verbs are this color. It's only when you select the randomize button that everything will completely change. And that will just continue to change every time the lesson is played. Whereas when you customize it, it will stay the same. Does that answer the question?
I will let her respond to see if it does,
Okay.
and I'll let you know. But I
right.
also would like to say happy birthday. I am sorry that I
Thank
neglected to say
you.
that to you.
Thank you. It's all right. 36. It's not that special, I guess.
So she's trying to rub in that I'm not close to that. But look how hard my workers work, guys, that she's here on her birthday at night.
Oh,
So,
I have my party hat, so I'll,
okay.
I'll wear
There
that
you
later.
Thank you, Danielle.
Of course.
And Angela said, happy birthday. During
Thank you.
gameplay, does the randomize option change the color?
So the randomize option when students are playing, yes. So if you had this opened on multiple zones and you had the words all selected as random. So let's say I had this activity in 4 zones and I had 4 different groups of students. The randomize would have each words totally different, and it is I don't know the algorithm that creates it. It's just all completely random. It's only when you choose the color of the word that it'll stay that color, regardless of how many zones you're doing or how many times you've played the lesson. So I'm hoping that answered that question.
She said thank you.
Great. So with sentences and words, I'll show you some from the community. I had mentioned before about being able to customize and create your own backgrounds. So we have a lot of really great templates on our own, but other options, and this is a Word one that Marielle created. As you can see, the background for this kind of matches with these questions. And I'll show you how we can go and edit that. So as part of the lesson design, and this is a lesson I didn't create, I was able to find it in the community just through a simple search. And once I've played the lesson, it becomes part of my group of lessons. So then I can go through and I can edit all of her lesson. It won't change it on the community. It'll still be original on the community, but now I can customize it and make it specific to the needs of my students. So if I need to do any scaffolding, or if I wanted to add more extensions, that's an option that I have. So with this words lesson, we have our directions of how to play written in the description, read the clues to the students, ask them to work in teams to put the word in each line together. So we can see that the words in the lines are to stay together. She's set it up so that it is color-coded, and the clues are on the side. So this background she created and then just saved it as a JPEG and uploaded it into the background option. Other options that you have with the lessons is you have the ability to link in YouTube videos. So if I had a YouTube video that explained how to use this lesson or the concept, this is water trivia, I could look up, or I could add by copying and pasting my YouTube link. I also could search. I'd always want to preview. I could pick the water video that made the most sense, add it in, and then I can determine the starting and end point. So if it was a really long video and I wanted students to only watch maybe the first 90 seconds to 2 minutes in, there's only 30 seconds that I maybe wanted them to actually watch, I can customize and add that. So it would only be the piece of the video that I wanted my students to watch. And I can also choose to have it play before my lesson. So in this case, if I hit play, as soon as I play this lesson either on a device or on my interactive panel, the video would pop up in the beginning. So in this case, and then I'm going ahead and close that. And then it would go through to my lesson. All of our lessons also have filter tags so that you can set up the age group of your students, the subject, the country, and any additional web links. So if you had a link to a Google Doc that you wanted your students to complete or another website that you wanted them to examine, you can attach those links and those would appear in the lesson description. You also have the ability to add standards. So we can do our standards searching by region. So we have all of the Common Core standards added in. Or you could search by specific. So maybe I'm not sure exactly the title of the standards, but I know it's about the water cycle. I could type that in. I can change my grade, be for 4th grade, and then search for that standard. We'll see if there's anything for water cycle in 4th grade. I'm taking a guess. And of course, I could always customize by my region. So if I wanted, for a particular area that I lived, I could find that location and make it a little easier for myself. And then I can add those standards in. That's one of the ways we can also search for lessons within our community. So I brought you through the creating of a lesson. I can also show you how you can find lessons that are already pre-made. We have literally thousands in our lesson community. I'm part of a global content team creating lessons. We make sure that our lessons are standard aligned and that we have a high level of rigor, and we do peer review to make sure that we are creating content that is appropriate for the classroom and meets the needs of students. We're all educators. We have the background, so we understand the pedagogy that goes into lesson design and creation as well. So from our community, from our homepage, we can see lessons that we feature. So we sometimes feature different events or different locations. We can search from lesson activities by searching a particular topic. So if I wanted something about ratios, I could type in ratios and it would pull up all of the lessons related to that. I can then filter it by age group, by the lesson activity type. So I can go ahead and show you just words. I can filter down by my subjects. So all of those tags, when we are creating a lesson, these are ways that we could search for it. And then I could also search by NUITEQ teachers. So these would be lessons that have been peer reviewed, that are of high rigor, that meet academic standards. Those would be examples of that. If I found a lesson that I liked, I could like it. I can play it. I can also read a little bit of a description about this lesson. So it will tell me this lesson was for the Dominican Republic, the age group, and it would give me a description of that lesson itself. When I like a lesson, those lessons will appear under my lesson activities in the liked lesson activities list. So if I'm just perusing through lessons that I like and I haven't played it yet, I can heart it, come back to it, play it later. See all the different lessons I've liked. With all of the lessons too, once I've played them, they do become part of my lesson collection. So when I go to open on my interactive panel, all I need to do is sync my account, and then my lessons would appear on my panel as well, so then I would be able to play them. I also have the option, one of the things I really enjoy with Snowflake is we can assign lesson activities to students to complete on their own device. So we have that really great model in that you have the interactivity of using the panels, and you can have many students up there touching, manipulating, moving, collaborating together and playing the lesson activities, or you can assign them for independent practice. So with all of my lessons, like there's one that Kelly created, the types of sentences, I can then send it to my students. When I send to my students, they would appear in my class. This is a really great feature because you're able to link in your Google Classroom. So if you're a Google school, you can link that in. So I can manually add in my information, creating a new class. So Snowflake class. I can add my students individually by email. I can add them as a list, and that would add in my students. I could also import from my Google Classroom. So there's my demo class I had created before. So that we can see my students in my class. I can see which students have signed in. And we do have single sign-on abilities. So I have my students in my class. I then can take my lesson activity and I can assign that to my student to complete. So if I wanted my students to complete this types of sentences lesson activity, I'd hit my three dots, select send to students. It tells me which classes I can choose from. And it also gives me the ability to select individual students. So maybe I only wanted a couple of my students to do it. Maybe this was a scaffolded activity and I'm assigning something similar to other students. So I can select which students I want to complete. I can also assign a due date. And then I send that assignment to my students. And I can review their progress. So I can see with my assignments which students have completed them, how long they took, my average class score. Now in this case, this is not a gradable assessment, so this would be something students would do for practice. But I can see that my students didn't open them. If my students had, it would tell me how long they had spent completing that lesson activity, and if it was a gradable assessment, what their score was. And in our lesson templates, we do have 8 lessons out of the 16 templates that are gradable, so that you can send those to students and have it back as data and leave individual comments to students too. Let me see if I have another assignment that maybe students completed. So I can see this old assignment, my students, what their score would be, the amount of time, and then I have the opportunity to give feedback. So I could say, great job putting together your sentences, or make sure that you're paying attention to punctuation, things that I wanted my students to focus on. I can add that individual customized feedback to my students. And that's all through the classes, managing students, and reviewing progress option. Are there any questions about not just the words and sentence templates, but any questions regarding how to use Snowflake or Snow.live in your classroom?
We have an unusually quiet group tonight, Danielle.
That's okay. I know it's that midweek. A lot of people are probably getting close to their midwinter break. I don't know if, I know we got a lot of Hazelwood people. I don't know if you have a week off in February. A lot of East Coast schools do, and they're gearing up for that. Or everybody just has the flu and is super sick. So it's one or the other.
We'll give everyone a couple of minutes to pop in any questions they might have. And we also will be respectful of your time, so that if you don't have questions, and if Danielle's covered her material, then we will release everyone. 2 questions. If my students are using iPads, am I able to download the app to the iPads?
Jack, would you be able to answer that question? Are we talking like the Snowflake app, or being able to access Snow.live?
The Snowflake app you would not be able to download to your iPad. Correct. One, it just would not be strong enough to run the app. But what they could do is open any browser, and preferably Chrome, and go to Snow.live and use everything on Snow.live. So Kimberly, I hope that answers that question for you. And then Tara asks, is there a way for parents to remotely access how their child did on these gradable assignments without me putting data in?
No, there's not a way. There's not a parent portal. I know that Google Classroom has that feature where parents can receive emails about their students' assignments. With this, there's not that parent portal. It would just be having to communicate with the parents whether or not students did the assignment. And hopefully the students communicating that with their parents first. I suppose if a parent had their students' login information, they could probably just check on their own too.
I would like to go back to the iPad question. I think that if you are looking at a lot of things that are changing in apps and development right now, you're going to see that a lot more people are developing on HTML more, just because it's easier to update than to have to update apps on different systems all the time. So Kimberly, I would recommend that you check it out using Chrome. It works wonderfully well, just like anything. It would work on the app on your touch screen. So that would be great for you to try out. And then you just ask another question. Are you able to print the results to send to the parents?
That's a really good question. That is not a feature I have tried. I'm going to go and we're going to figure that out together. Unfortunately, none of my students in my classes are doing their work, so I don't have any data on it. I suppose that I could, if I selected my student, I could screenshot and print that to show my parents. I don't believe there is a way to kind of individually go through without that and print it. But I'm going to make a note of that so that at our next webinar, I have an answer. I need my students to do their work so I can go in and input their data. If at any time you have questions or you wanted to go back and check something that maybe we covered in the webinar, but you needed more information, we do have training videos at training.nuitec.com. So it goes through not just all of the features of the individual lesson activities, but it also will go through all of the different components of the Snowflake app. So as you're playing it on your interactive panel. Each of the videos are really short. If you watched everything from start to finish, it would take maybe an hour and a half. There's also some really great little, I call them cheat sheets, but for a lot of the lesson activity types, there are really nice inspiration sheets, kind of lesson activity tips. So, but all of these PDFs are just creative ways that you can go ahead and create different lesson activities. So you can see through all of the training videos. It's a lot of information, but it's all in really small, easy to digest bites. So it would be 90 minutes start to finish. And they're a really great resource if you need to go back and just remember how to create a lesson activity or how to use one of the many features on your Snowflake application on your panel.
Okay. Danielle, we don't have any other questions that have come in, so I would like to thank you for coming on your birthday and doing a webinar for us. So happy birthday.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank all of the people that joined us this evening, again, for our Words and Sentences webinar. And we hope that you continue to join us and that our community continues to grow. We look forward to seeing everyone again next week. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone, for coming. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.